Okay, good Tavach. Tonight is the anniversary of the passing of Tzemach Tzedek. It was a teaching of Tzemach Tzedek that is very powerful. I think about this teaching very often, actually. Every day we say Shema, and the end of the Shema um, are the words, I am the Lord your God who took you out of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. And Tzemach Tzedek asked, why do we repeat those words twice? And actually, our custom is repeated a third time in order to make sure that we have 248 words in the Shema. So we add those words a second time. I am Lord your God. Again, I am Lord your God, took you out of Egypt. I am Lord your God. And we say again, I am Lord your God. Truth. So the Tzemach Tzedek said, why the repetition? He asked a question. So the Tzemach Tzedek said something very powerful and very personal, very relevant to the time we're in right now. He said that you might think that there's a great Hashem, there is a great God, who rescues the Jewish people when there is a big problem. But there's a one tiny little problem that you're dealing with, or you're just one individual and you're dealing with a bigger problem, but it's not something with all the Jewish people are dealing with. So then why would he mix in? Why would he take care of you? So therefore we repeat the words and we say again, I am Lord your God, to highlight the same God that rescued us from Egypt. He himself comes and rescues each of us from whatever's going on in our lives, that whatever's happening. Hashem says, I'm your personal God who takes care of you personally. So on that note, as we're preparing for the holiday of Passover, there's a lot of effort that's needed to prepare for Passover. And a person might think, like, why do we need all this effort? It's so hard. But the truth is that the getting rid of the chametz, is also about freeing ourselves completely from Egypt. So getting rid of the tiniest bit of chametz, in the language of the Talmud, a mashu, a tiny bit of chametz, is really about having a total and complete redemption, total freedom. Hashem doesn't want a Jew to have the tiniest bit of anything holding him down, bringing him down, limiting him. And that's the meaning of ridding ourselves completely of chametz to an extreme degree. It's about completely exiting Egypt on a personal level. So I'm going to share with you a few teachings of great tzaddikim about how careful they were to get rid of chametz. First, I shared in shul last week that the Rabbi Rashab once brought he once traveled to a city in Russia called Rostov, and one of his suitcases was kept in the train station. And so the Rabbi Rashab, that suitcase, although it was locked up with a key, the Rabbi Rashab didn't want to trust that the utensils that were in that suitcase were kosher for Passover, and he wanted them all to be kosher again. And he personally supervised that they should be kosher. And in the process, there was a samovar, and the samovar had to also be koshered. And while the Rabbi Rashab was watching the process, he wanted them to open up the spigot of the samovar, but no one wanted to touch the spigot because boiling hot water was pouring out of the top of the samovar. The Rabbi Rashab himself went to move the spigot, and the one of the Hasidim who saw this, Rabbi Yaakov Lando, saw that the Rabbi Rashab was burned physically from this in the process. And Rabbi Rashab said to him not to make a tzimis, don't make a big deal out of it. And but that's the kind of an incredible devotion to this mitzvah. On the second story I heard today, there was a baker, one who started the Kfar Chabad, famous Kfar Chabad matzah bakery, Rabbi Perman, who he would come to Rebbe on Rosh Hashanah, and Rebbe would give out wine for a blessing after Shabbos, and the Rebbe would give him always 3 bottles of mashke, 3 bottles of vodka as a blessing for the different things that he was involved in. 1 bottle for one organization, a 2nd bottle for a 2nd organization, and a 3rd bottle for a 3rd organization. The 3rd organization was the matzah bakery. And one Rosh Hashanah is coming by the Rebbe, and the Rebbe gives him only 2 bottles, not the 3rd bottle. And he thought maybe he didn't deserve a bottle for the matzah bakery because maybe the matzah bakery wasn't running under the standards that the Rebbe wanted him to maintain. So Rabbi Perman wrote the Rebbe a letter asking the Rebbe what is the reason the Rebbe did not give him a matzah for a bottle of vodka for his matzah bakery. The Rebbe answered something very interesting. Usually we don't, we know that it's a custom every year Rosh Hashanah to add a new stringency in your observance of Torah and its commandments, but not always are we privy to know what the Rebbe himself takes upon himself to be careful personally in regards to his own observance of Torah mitzvahs. But here the Rebbe shared something. The Rebbe said that his personal thing that he took upon himself that year or Shoshana was that he didn't want to associate chametz and matzah even in his thoughts. He didn't want chametz and matzah to connect in his thoughts. And therefore, he wouldn't give a bottle of vodka for the matzah bakery because then conceptually he's connecting the vodka, which is not kosher for Passover, with the matzah bakery, which is kosher for Passover. Obviously, it's a different level of stringency in Torah and commandments, and not don't try this at home, folks. Right? It's not for us, but it does gives us some insight to how far we need to go in our observance of this holiday, and not to say, "Well, I did so much," and to raise the bar, to devote ourselves to this mitzvah, even though it may be counterintuitive at times. On that note, I'll share with you one more thing about this subject. There was a custom in many yeshivas in before the war in Europe, or the Second World War. Many yeshivas didn't have a kitchen, so what the yeshiva students would do was that in order to eat, they would have to go to various homes. It was called the teg. Teg means the days. You'd have a day you would eat at one person's house, a day you would eat at another person's house, and that's how you were able to survive yeshiva. You go to various homes to eat. So two boys are talking about their experience and their challenges in eating the various homes that they were eating in. One boy, let's call him Yaakov. Yaakov says, "The home I eat in, it's really hard." Why is it so hard? Well, every single time I go to that home, they feed us kasha. They feed us the same thing. It's kasha. I can't stand eating kasha every single time. All right. The other boy, Moshe, says to Yaakov, he says, "Yaakov, you have a problem eating kasha every day. Let me tell you what happens to me when I go to the home that I eat in. When I go to the home that I eat in, they give excuses every single time why they don't have the food. One day they said, well, wasn't there a party this morning? Wasn't there a bris milah this morning? Didn't you have the food at the bris milah? We thought you wouldn't want to eat dinner because you had a big breakfast." Another day they're saying, well, we would have food for you, but the delivery didn't come. So the boys go home hungry. So Moshe says to Yaakov, he says, you could live with kasha, but you can't live with a teretz. In Hebrew, kasha is the name of a dish called kasha, but kasha also means a question. A teretz means an answer. So you said, metaphorically, you can live with questions, but you can't live with answers. With questions you can live, with answers you can't live. In other words, the home which serves kasha may not taste so good, but hey, at least it's kasha. The home which gives all these excuses why there's no food, you can't survive on excuses. So there is a message here about leaving Egypt. It's good to ask questions. It's good to challenge where. It's good to challenge where we are spiritually and ask questions. And it's not so good to give excuses of where we aren't and say we're not there because of various excuses. You can't live on excuses. You can't live on answers. With questions will bring you to the right place. So on that note, I want to share with you another story. Rabbi Gershon Jacobson Olav Shalom was the editor of the Yiddish newspaper, the Algemeiner. And the Rebbe once had a secretary call Rabbi Jacobson, and the Rebbe was very upset about the front page article of the New York Times. New York Times ran an article about how in the New York public schools, they're going to be starting a new curriculum. I think it's called health education, where they encourage promiscuity and they just try to protect the physical health of these boys and girls by telling them various things to do, but they're encouraging in the way they're teaching promiscuity. And the Rebbe had Rabbi Chadakov call Rabbi Jacobson, and the Rebbe was very upset, and Rabbi Jacobson gets his phone call. Rabbi Chadakov asks him, the Rebbe's secretary asks Rabbi Jacobson, did you read the New York Times? He said, yes. Are you referring to the article about the health education? And he said, yes. So the Rabbi Chadakov said that the Rebbe says this is something we have to sacrifice our lives for. Every Jew, and especially for you, Gershon Jacobson, you need to do something. We need to make an effort to repose the editor of the New York Times from his position. Actually, not the editor of the New York Times. Sorry, the commissioner, the educational commissioner of the New York public schools. He needs to be taken down from his position in order that the public schools should stop teaching in this manner. So Rabbi Jacobson was like, "What are you asking of me? What am I meant to do?" And the Rebbe himself gets on the phone, which is very unusual. The Rebbe said, "You're asking what we need to do. You need to you have to have sacrifice. You need to write about this in newspapers. And if you write about this," the Rebbe said, "then they'll write about this also in other newspapers in the whole world. They'll write about this in Israel, in Japan, in Russia, and everywhere. That this is something which is unacceptable." So it was very uncharacteristic, but the Rebbe spoke to Rabbi Jacobson directly on the phone, and he said to him, "Reb Gershon, if you have time, I want to speak to you after Mincha." Of course, Rabbi Jacobson went to 770, to Rebbe's synagogue, and after Mincha, he went into the Rebbe's room. When he came in the Rebbe's room, he saw that on the Rebbe's table, there was this article in the New York Times. And the Rebbe said to him like this, "All night I could not sleep. What am I doing here in 770 when in New York they're educating millions of children this way? What am I doing? What are rabbis doing? What are newspapers doing?" So Rabbi Jacobson is, of course, like shocked. He says, "Rebbe, what am I supposed to do?" So Rebbe responded, "Do you know what alacrity is? Do you know what zrizus is?" So he says, "Yes." So Rebbe raised his voice and said very sharply, "I couldn't sleep all night. I want you to call all the Jewish organizations, Jewish Orthodox organizations, all the rabbis, all the call the Chabad rabbis, and I want you to ask them what are they doing about the fact that the front page of the New York Times is talking about educating 12-year-old and 13-year-old children in this way. There's not something to be embarrassed of. You can't be embarrassed about this. You have to go to the rabbis, and they're probably, there's no doubt that they'll tell you, oh, this is not something that we have to deal with. It's not something which is affecting our schools, but the Rebbe said, although it's not something affecting their schools, this is something which really you have to stand up and say, whoever is to Hashem, come and join me. Similar to what the Maccabim said, whoever wants to be close to do what Hashem wants, come to me. So Rabbi Jacobson said he never saw the Rebbe. He had a very personal and close relationship, but the Rebbe never spoke to him in this manner. And he immediately, after leaving the Rebbe's room, you want to get it? Yeah, thank you. After leaving the Rebbe's room, he immediately called the Mr. Earl Jacobs, who was the president of Young Israel. And he introduced himself as a journalist, and he asked him, "What is your response for this newspaper article?" So he said immediately, "I'm going to send a letter to the protest to the educational commissioner, and I'm going to ask him to clarify his position, how they're allowing the schools to teach this." So Rabbi Chadakov heard this phone call because Rabbi Jacobson made the phone call from the Rebbe's secretariat, and he immediately told the Rebbe what Earl Jacobs had said, the president of Young Israel, and the Rebbe said that that Rabbi Jacobson in his newspaper, the Allgemeiner, he should print in his front page of his newspaper a picture of Earl Jacobs and his letter of protest. And the Rebbe said again that if he will write about this, then they'll also write about this in Israel and in Russia and in Japan and in other newspapers. In those days, the Allgemeiner Journal was printed on Wednesday night. Rabbi Jacobson would always bring 10 copies of his newspaper to the Rebbe's, to 770. One copy for the Rebbe, one copy for the Rebbitzin, other copies for the secretary to the Rebbe. And that week, the paper came out at 10 o'clock at night. By 11 o'clock at night, he already got a phone call from Rabbi Chadakov. The Rebbe asked me to tell you, Rabbi Chadakov tells Rabbi Jacobson, he wants to thank you, and he wants to know if you can come see him tomorrow. Of course, he came to the Rebbe the next morning, and the Rebbe was less if you will, a tumultuous mood, if you will. And the Rebbe thanked Rabbi Jacobson. I want to thank you for what you did. I want to participate in what you did. And the Rebbe gave him 3 times $18, $18, 3 sets of $18. As the Rebbe said, I'm giving this to you because of your alacrity. The Rebbe asked him, do you know what alacrity is? Again, Rabbi Jacobson says yes. The Rebbe said, thanks to alacrity, many things happen in Jewish history because of alacrity. One of the things that happened is the Akedah. When Hashem asked Avram to bring his only son as a sacrifice, Torah says Avram got up in the morning. The Rebbe commented, Avram Avinu was a big Chabadnik, meaning he was a great intellectual. And he could have sat and studied Likutei Torah, he could have studied deep Hasidic texts. He could have learned Sichas, he could have learned Chitas. But when he was asked to bring his only son as a sacrifice to Hashem, he could have waited till the evening. But he could have went to the mikveh. He could have checked his tzitzis. In other words, he could have done a lot of things which are very high and holy and spiritual, but not what he was asked to do. But Avram didn't look for any excuses. He didn't look for any teretzes, any explanations, any excuses. Instead, he went right away. Rebbe told Rabbi Jacobson, thank you for your alacrity, and Hashem will help that we should hope that things will work out. Right. So Rabbi Jacobson satisfied the Rebbe's instructions and acted with alacrity. And so too, the Torah tells us that when the Jewish people heard Moshe Rabbeinu's commandment on the 10th of Nisan to prepare for Passover, they went with alacrity. This is something which is key in those last 2 days before Passover, to use our alacrity to clean our homes and give out matzah to those who not have matzah and those who not yet have a place to go to a Seder, to work with alacrity. Alacrity, as in the definition that the Rebbe used in this story, was to go immediately and get what has to get done. And on that note, I want to share with you one more story about the power of reaching out to a Jew with another mitzvah and not to give up hope on anyone. You can't give up hope on any Jew, as the Rebbe taught so many times. There was a Jew named Vincian Lasker, who he had an audience with the Rebbe, and very close relationship with the Rebbe. And one time he shared a story about that happened to a family that he knew. He didn't say the name of the family, but a family that he knew. Interesting caveat, not so relevant to the story. His father was almost the same age as the Rebbe, and his father once remarked about this when he came to the Rebbe to receive $1. The Rebbe will give $1 every Sunday to give to charity. So his father told the Rebbe once, you and I have a lot in common, because I say the same chapter of Tehillim as you for a good part of the year. In other words, You're supposed to say the chapter of Tehillim according to your age. So if you're like 10 years old, you say the 11th chapter. If you're 11, you say the 12th chapter. So he was saying the same chapter of Tehillim as the Rebbe because he was almost the same age. So part of the year until for part of the year, he said the same chapter. So the Rebbe said to him, "You should always walk after me, always follow my ways, always follow me." Then he had a new grandson, and his father told the Rebbe when Rabbi Benzin Lasker had a new grandson. So his father, when a great grandson, came to the Rebbe and told the Rebbe that he has a new great grandson, and immediately the Rebbe said, "Yes, Lasker from Lud." The Rebbe knew immediately who he was referring to and which family had that baby. Anyway, so the story I want to share with you as follows. There was a couple that was very distraught. The husband and wife were both from Hungary, and they were living in New York. They were not from a Chabad family, but they were very distraught because they were connected to Chabad. I mean, the wife worked in the Chabad camp in Muna in the Catskills, and the husband was very, very learned person, and so their brother-in-law was Rabbi J.J. Hecht, and so they had a big problem. They went to Rabbi J.J. Hecht to ask him for help. And this Benzin Lasker saw this happen. She comes into Rabbi Hecht's office, and she says, "You have to help me." She burst out crying. She says, "Our 16-year-old daughter has left our home. She's left our home, and she's gone off to we don't know where. We know that she has not good friends. We know that she cast off Judaism. She's completely not involved in Judaism at all. But what's happened now is we've discovered that she's planning to get married next week to some non-Jewish guy. We have no idea what to do. You have to help us." So they hired a private detective, Rabbi Hecht, but hired a private detective to find out where their daughter was. And meanwhile, he decided to try to arrange a private audience for this couple. This was on a Thursday, and he got them to a audience with the Rebbe that very Thursday. They come into the Rebbe, and the Rebbe asked them a question. They tell the Rebbe the story. The Rebbe was listening very carefully to the problem, and after they described the entire problem to the Rebbe asks him a question that seems to be totally out of left field. The Rebbe asked them, "When you got married, did your parents agree to your shidduch? Did your parents bless your marriage?" So actually, very shamefacedly, the husband looks on the ground and he said, "Actually, no, my parents, there was some problem, and my parents weren't happy with it. And not only that, but that caused a whole rift in the family because our parents didn't want to bless our marriage." But then the Rebbe asked, "Well, did you ever ask your parents to forgive you for what happened?" And again, he says, very shamefacedly, that no, he didn't. So Rebbe said, "So if that's the story, then you need to go to your parents' gravesite and ask them for forgiveness." So this rabbi tells the Rebbe, "Well, that'd be very difficult because our parents are buried somewhere in Hungary. My parents are buried somewhere in Hungary, and I don't know exactly which cemetery they're buried in. And even if I did, many of these cemeteries were desecrated during the war and destroyed. So I don't know, even if I knew which cemetery, if I would be able to find which cemetery they're in." So Rebbe responded, "If that's the case, then you should go to the Ohel, to the resting place of my father-in-law tomorrow, and bring with you a minyan, 10 people with you, and ask your parents, relate there in front of the minyan what happened, and ask your parents for forgiveness there in the Ohel." That's what Rebbe said. So of course, Rabbi Lasker was one of the 10 people that went to the Ohel with him the next day, and in front of Rabbi Lasker, he shared the whole thing at the Ohel by the gravesite of the previous Rebbe. And while the minyan was gathering, he shared the story. And at that time, the detective reported that their daughter was found, and she doesn't want to come home, and so the parents and Rabbi Hech are now busy trying to figure out what should we do. They know where the girl is. Doesn't matter. She doesn't want to come home. So they thought of the following. It doesn't seem that the Rebbe encouraged this idea. It seemed like it was their own idea, but this is what they decided to do. This girl's 16 years old. She's underage. She left home. She also took various items from the home. That's stealing. So they reported her to the police. They said that she has gone missing and she stole items from the home, and this is where she is. And the police arrested her. And when she's sitting in jail, and her fiance was trying to locate her, but he couldn't because where was she? But anyway, after she leaves jail, her spirit wasn't broken. She wants to go back to her suitor, to her non-Jewish fiance. Rabbi Hecht put in a lot of hours trying to talk to her until she agreed to continue her studies in Israel. And Baruch Hashem, she left New York, went to Israel, and these things worked out well. And she got married and had and raised a family that keeps Torah and its commandments. Baruch Hashem. So anyway, so as we prepare for Passover, to think about people that may not have a Seder to go to and may not have matzah, and you never know the impact of reaching out to someone can have, and it really could be the difference, because as Rabbi Marash taught, matzah is godly. It's a godly food. When you eat matzah, you're eating godliness. You're giving faith to a person for the entire year. That's why it's so important to be involved in this effort to give matzah to people. In fact, there was one very wealthy individual who told the Rebbe that he wants to contribute to something big. The Rebbe said to him that he should give money to buy matzah to distribute to people. So he told the Rebbe, again, I want to do something big, like a building. I want to do something really big. The Rebbe said, I consider this very big. This is, by the Rebbe, this is very big. Giving another Jew a matzah is a big thing. So as we get ready for Passover, let's do something big, and let's find some Jews who do not yet have the matzah and do not have a Seder, and do something big for them and big for the Jewish people. And we should see the celebration of Pesach this year. Immediately we should go to Yerushalayim. Tonight's anniversary again of the passing of Tzemach Tzedek, and the passing of a Tzaddik. The Tzaddik's neshama goes to a higher place and channels salvation on the earth. Bekerev haaretz. The words bekerev haaretz, as the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, brings salvation in the midst of the earth. Rashi says those words mean in Egypt, the lowest of places. That means the salvation comes not just to good places, but also into the tunnels. Wherever the hostages are captured, the salvation should reach them. They should be freed. And all the Jewish people should be freed from this exile. We should celebrate the coming of Mashiach immediately, and automatically Pesach in Yerushalayim with all of our people together. L'chaim, l'chaim, a good tavach, a freilich vach should be a kosher and freilich Pesach. Kosher freilich Pesach Leon, kosher freilich Pesach David, Yehuda, Ben Chayil, Baruch, and Reb Samson.
Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov Varach, Baruch.